Your kitchen sink is filled with dirty water. You've just washed the dishes, and you pull the plug out of the drain hole. Do you see how the water forms a funnel, and all the pieces of food get into its center? This is a small whirlpool. Now imagine that this is not a kitchen sink, but a sea with a several feet wide whirlpool. And it draws in not pieces of food, but a small boat. And you're on this boat. You jump off the side and try to swim away, but the whirlpool is stronger than you. It attracts you despite your attempts to swim away. So the first thing you should do is calm down. Yeah, it isn't easy when the deep sea is trying to swallow you up, but if you don't save your strength, you won't be able to survive. And now remember one life hack. Do not try to swim in the opposite direction when the current from the shore carries you away. Head to the side. Thus, you escape from the stream sooner or later and can safely swim to the beach. Inside the whirlpool, you have to act similarly. You need to stop struggle and swim in the direction of the flow. Thus, you'll keep your energy and increase your speed. But don't swim at the very center of the vortex. Try to move away from it in the last moment and you'll get out. Now go to the surface and stay away from the whirlpool. Great! You have survived. You promise yourself never to go to sea again without a life jacket. But of course, the best way to escape from the whirlpool is not to get caught. If you're going on a sea cruise or kayaking at the mouth of the river, find out all about these places. Perhaps they are filled with water traps. You swim to the shore and decide to learn all about whirlpools. It forms in the sink or bathtub because the water begins to drain into the hole and swirl. There are no drain holes in the sea, lake, river, or ocean, and water is formed there because of the collision of two currents. A strong wind can only create one current. The difference in water temperature and its density can make another. Also, the current can be caused by tides. This is when the moon's gravity affects the water. So when two currents flowing in different directions meet, they form a vortex. Two streams of water swirl around each other and move down in a spiral, creating an empty space in the center. Most of the whirlpools are too small and don't pose a danger. But if the water vortex is strong and large, it can sink ships. Such strong whirlpools are called maelstroms. They are usually formed when two currents collide near narrow reservoirs and straits. The world's largest and most dangerous maelstrom is located in the Saltstraumen Strait in northern Norway. Every 6 hours, a whirlpool forms there with a diameter of about 33 feet wide and 16 feet deep. And it can be several whirlpools formed at once. Ships sailing through the bay follow a strict schedule to avoid falling into the water trap. This whirlpool got into the Guinness Book of Records as the largest in the world. However, some whirlpools are hundreds of times bigger, but they are invisible. Giant whirlpools in the Arctic Ocean can reach 18 miles in length. This is the size of a city, and these giant whirlpools are invisible. Fortunately, they are not as dangerous as those that form in Norway. The waters of the Arctic and Atlantic Oceans mix and form water vortexes invisible to satellites. Usually scientists notice such whirlpools with the help of thermal imagers or a change in the color of the water. When the current filled with marine life mixes with lifeless waters, it is visible from the satellite. But the new giant whirlpools are masked under a layer of water with the same temperature. They hide deep enough not to be noticed by satellite thermal imagers. Scientists managed to catch them using gliders. These small pilotless submarines float underwater and record information about the temperature and salt level. Scientists discovered that these whirlpools formed because of the collision of cold and warm currents. Warm water here is rich in nutrients, while cold water is almost lifeless. In this way, warm currents share useful elements and spread them evenly throughout this region of the ocean. Observing invisible whirlpools can help scientists uncover many details about the structure of ocean ecosystems. Whirlpools exist not only in water but also in space. Vortexes from the plasma energy of the sun can be several times wider than the radius of our planet. However, all this solar radiation cannot create giant vortexes on Earth because the magnetic field protects us. The solar wind glides past the planet's atmosphere like a wind over the ocean surface. But a little energy still manages to break through the protection. Solar whirlpools insert an electrified gas into the magnetic field, creating holes through which the sun's plasma passes through the atmosphere. If whirlpools happen during the collision of different currents, it means that you can predict their appearance in advance. But there are unpredictable natural phenomena in the seas and oceans that pose a danger for small boats, yachts, giant ships, and oil rigs. The phenomenon is called a rogue wave. So now let's get aboard your yacht and sail somewhere in the ocean. It doesn't matter what ocean and where exactly you are, because rogue waves can appear anywhere. A small storm is starting, but your boat can easily handle it. The wind raises small waves that beat against the hull of your yacht. But then, among these waves, one giant appears several times larger than all the others. It would quickly turn your vessel over like a paper ship. But fortunately, this wave passes by and dissolves into the sea. This unpredictable wave of enormous power can destroy huge ships in a second. And such disasters have happened many times. Sailors all over the world told each other stories about the giant waves that appear during a storm and in a quiet sea. Many considered such waves only fairy tales, such as legends about the Kraken and Atlantis. But at the end of the 20th century, people were able to capture this sea phenomenon with a laser detector that measured the size of the wave. On January 1st, 1995, a massive rogue wave crashed into an oil station in the Norwegian North Sea. There was a storm that day, with big waves about 40 feet long. At some point, they formed a big guy, an 85-foot wave. That day, rogue waves turned from a fairy tale into reality. Researchers estimated that this natural phenomenon may destroyed about 22 supercarriers only in the second half of the 20th century. Also, scientists discovered that just 1 in 10,000 waves is a rogue one, and every year, their height increases by 1%. Some of the largest rogue waves reached a height of 100 feet. It's like a 10-story building. This giant can easily break even the strongest and largest ship. Scientists can't always predict their appearance, and still don't know their nature. So rogue waves make the ocean a much more dangerous place than we thought. According to one version, rogue waves appear because strong winds create big waves. When two such waves collide with each other, a giant rogue wave may appear. Another theory says that eddies create rogue waves. These eddies form along the edges of the ocean currents, and then they drift separately for a long time, increasing kinetic energy and forming eddies field. The kinetic energy contained in these fields can charge the waves and increase their strength. However, scientists study microwaves and light to understand this phenomenon better. It turned out that these sea waves are similar in their behavior to these two natural things. The researchers hope studying light waves will help understand the nature of rogue waves.
One day, all the crabs disappeared. People searched in the seas, oceans, lakes, rivers, rainforests. Not a single live crab, only old shells. Crabs shed or molt several times during their life. Their body keeps growing, but their shell doesn't. So they throw off their old suit and hide. They sit there in silence until their new one grows. But why did every single crab molt on the same day? Where are they hiding? 6 months later, "Sweet," says an old fisherman, and pulls on his fishing rod. He's out on his boat catching fish in the Atlantic. The rod hasn't moved for an hour, but now it's latched onto something big. The fisherman pulls the rod with all his strength. Then the joy on his face turns to fear. A giant crab claw shoots out of the water and snips the fishing line. A second claw appears and crushes the boat in half with one pinch. Just then, a cargo ship sails by and scares the monster away. Some sailors pull the fisherman on deck, and he looks down overboard. A huge crab the size of a car is swimming around. Its claw shoots out again and grabs onto the ship's metal hull. The screeching of metal is insane. The captain signals full speed ahead, and with a jolt, the crab's colossal claw comes loose. The ship sails to the shore on a low and mysterious tide. There's a strange vibration on shore. The sand begins to sink in on itself and form funnels. Humongous crabs crawl out. There are hundreds, thousands of them, and they're all heading for the water. Panic strikes, and people scream and run inland. While they flee, some people video the madness. It goes viral. But they're not alone. People everywhere are coming face to face with these monsters. No one knows what's going on. Crabs dig burrows when they molt. Deep down in the sand, they're protected from predators and bad weather. This time, something weird happened. They hid way deeper than ever before, so they had more time to grow. For 6 months, they've been sitting and waiting for their new shell to grow. Now they're out, and they only want one thing: food. Most crabs eat fish, alive and not, snails, and even other crabs, anything that gets in their way. They love fights and are naturally aggressive. But now that they're massive, small shellfish and algae are just not enough. A big fish would be delicious, but they can't catch them because crabs don't swim well. But on land, they move pretty quickly. The big fish are safe, but what about the rest of us? One day later, thousands of eyes come out of the water, like 1,000 submarine periscopes. Crabs have excellent vision, and they can spot a potential meal from far away. Their eyes can distinguish between houses and moving objects, cars, and people. Thousands of pairs of sharp, snapping claws emerge from the water and head for the city. There's chaos on the street. Crabs are running around, cutting down electric poles, overturning cars, and smashing glass. Everyone rushes off the street and heads for a narrow alley. A crab cuts off their escape. It eyes its prey, but it looks like the alley's too narrow. Whew, the people are safe. Not. The crab turns sideways and squeezes into the alley. It's hungry, and it starts snapping its claws. They're blocked in on all sides. The crabs are everywhere. The only way is up. People scramble up the fire escape to the roof. The crabs try to follow, but everything they grab onto, trees, even the metal fire escape, crushes under their enormous weight. The crabs are left looking up, hungry. Up on the roof, people watch as crabs destroy their city. Humans hunker down in their homes, but that doesn't stop the crabs. They break down doors and walls. Everyone gathers on the roofs, looking up to the sky for help. Helicopters finally arrive and evacuate the city. Huge crabs bring huge problems to Christmas Island. It's in the waters between Indonesia and Australia. The islanders pack their bags, drive to the pier, and leave the island. They're pretty scared, but also a bit confused. Once the last human's gone, the island gets quiet. But there still aren't any crabs. What's going on? The sky is overcast, and it starts to rain heavily. As soon as the first drop hits the ground, a tiny vibration shoots across the land. The rainforest in the middle of the island starts to change shape. Trees fall and the earth shakes. But this is not an earthquake. It's worse. Giant red crabs poke their heads out. Not hundreds, not thousands, but tens of millions. These crabs migrate every year from the rainforest to the coast of the Indian Ocean to breed. Even at normal size, the crabs cover the roads. They look like a long red river. The migration lasts about 3 weeks. But now that these crabs are so big, they cover almost half the island. They demolish trees, cars, houses, everything in their path. Then, just like that, they disappear into the Indian Ocean. It looks like a typhoon swept over the whole island. Crab hunters appear all over the world. They trap the monsters and tame them. But no, people don't use crabs as pets. They sit on them and joust. In the Middle Ages, 2 knights with spears would ride on horseback and charge at each other. Now there are crab tournaments. Supersized crabs instead of horses, and claws instead of spears. The strongest crabs live on the tropical islands in the Indian and Pacific Oceans. Coconut crabs. They don't need much water, they mostly live in forests, and their claws are the strongest of any crab. The only thing that comes close is the awesome power of an alligator bite. Try to split a coconut. You'll need a hammer, maybe some other tools. These crabs do it with their claws, and that's when they were regular size. Now they can chop a palm tree in two without breaking a sweat. But there is some good news out there. Japan is home to some useful crabs, spider crabs, the largest in the world. Their normal size is about 12 feet from claw to claw, about the length of a car. Their long legs make them look like spiders. There's not a lot of animals out there who would want to go up against such a large crab. These new spider crabs are 5 stories tall, and they take steps 10 feet long. The really cool thing is that these crabs can live up to 100 years. Even better, they're not aggressive. These big, friendly giants mostly eat plants, and they're tame to ride, kind of like riding an epic-sized camel. Now that crabs don't have any competitors or enemies, their population starts to explode. They take over the planet. Humans are helpless. Their strong shells protect them from danger, and their sharp claws mean business. Cities put up gargantuan walls to protect themselves, and scientists try desperately to figure out a solution. Crabs don't only live near the shore. They live in forests, rivers, lakes, almost anywhere there's moisture. It's hard enough to fend off one giant crab, let alone hundreds. People start to head for the safety of large, dry deserts. It's hard to survive. Humans need food and water, just like the huge crabs. Crabs are taking over everything. Humans don't have the resources to stop them. It seems like all hope's lost. But just then, they remember. There's no need for scientists and inventors. There's an old fisherman's trick that might just be the key to controlling the crabs. It's called a crab's bucket or crab trap. If you put a bunch of crabs into one bucket, they won't be able to get out. By instinct, they start to interfere with each other. One crab climbs up, but the other crabs grab it and pull it back down. Doesn't have to be a bucket. The traps can be all kinds of shapes: funnel, cube, even pyramid shaped. And that's what people decided to do. They dig deep ditches all over the world and line them with concrete so that the monster crabs can't dig their way out. Then they lure the crabs in with some tasty fish and seaweed. Once the crabs go in, they're trapped for good. Victory! And soon, down at supermarkets all over the world, there's a special sale on fresh crab. Hey, don't forget the seafood sauce. Now prepare yourself for some weird stuff. We're going to dive into the fascinating world of sea cucumbers, the squishy detritivores that are nature's very own recyclers. These exotic marine creatures might not be everyone's first choice for a pet. But trust me, they've got some unique talents that are worth talking about. Sea cucumbers are colorful little creatures with a digestive tract that's basically just a hole at either end. Their bodies are fat and squishy, covered in leathery skin. And guess what? They breathe through their butts. These amazing creatures have found a way to make the most out of every part of their body, few as they are. Now, you might be wondering what sea cucumbers do with their unique set of skills. Well, they play a crucial role in cleaning our planet's waters. They munch on all the debris found on the seabed and break it down internally, removing all the bad stuff in the process. It's like having little vacuums cleaning up the ocean floor. Believe it or not, sea cucumbers are in high demand in the kitchen too. They're harvested and traded in many countries. The Asian market, in particular, absolutely loves them. You can find them being sold cooked and dried under all sorts of fancy names. Or, if you prefer a more direct approach, you can just call them sea slugs. Now, here's the fun part. A dried sea cucumber can cost you up to a whopping $1,400 per pound. These squishy delicacies are truly worth their weight. But let's take a step back in time. The tradition of eating sea cucumbers goes way back, more than 1,000 years in Asia to be precise. And as demand for these curious creatures grew, so did the need to find them elsewhere. This led to overexploitation of local fisheries, causing sea cucumber stocks to diminish in many countries. Uh-oh, not good for our little sea cucumber friends. One of the most interesting examples of sea cucumbers is the pink see-through Fantasia. Not only does it look amazing, but it also has this great defense system, where it uses bioluminescence to scare off predators. Thankfully, some brilliant researchers around the world have decided to act. They're on a mission to breed sea cucumbers and replenish the depleted fisheries. They're also exploring how these creatures can be a reasonable food resource and help reduce the damage done by fish farming. In Scotland, for instance, where a team of enthusiastic students started a company for this particular purpose. Their goal? To figure out how sea cucumbers can absorb as much of the bad stuff they can in the water. They might just be the aquatic superheroes we've been waiting for. Meanwhile, in Sweden, marine biologists are working hard to restore the population of red signal sea cucumbers. These poor creatures have been fished out of local waters, but specialists are determined to give them a fighting chance. They're also exploring how sea cucumbers can fit into seafood cultivation. Their lab is like a sea cucumber daycare, carefully nurturing the next generation of these wiggly wonders. And let's not forget about Canada. Research scientists are focusing on the giant red sea cucumber. These magnificent creatures can grow up to 20 inches long and are perfect for co-cultivation with other species. They're even developing special containment systems that will make it easier to keep sea cucumbers where they're needed the most. Okay, speaking of amazing sea creatures, what about a fish that can fly? Heard that right, we're about to stumble upon a land where fins meet flying, and the ocean becomes a runway for these airborne acrobats. Prepare to be fantastically entertained. Nah, I didn't write that one. So picture this, you're lounging by the warm ocean waters, minding your own business, when suddenly you see a fish soaring through the air like a torpedo. That's right, they are real, and they got some serious style. With their sleek bodies and pectoral fins that resemble wings, they're the high flyers of the sea. Now, you might be wondering, why would a fish take to the skies? Well, it turns out these magnificent creatures have developed this nifty gliding ability as a sneaky trick to escape from their underwater foes. And boy, do they have plenty of enemies. Those guys are all on the lookout for a tasty flying fish snack. When it comes to their diet, these avian fishes are quite the foodies. They chow down on a variety of treats, including the ever-popular plankton. Who knew tiny floating organisms could be so delicious? Now let's take a closer look at the flying fish family album. We've got a whopping 40 known species strutting their stuff in the sky. And here's a fun fact. All of them have tails that are forked in an uneven manner, with the lower lobe being longer than the upper one. It's like the fishy version of a funky hairstyle. And there's more. Some of these weird flyers even have supersized pelvic fins, giving them the appearance of having 4 wings. Can you imagine the envy in the fish community when they see these trendsetters gliding by? Okay, now let's get to the nitty-gritty of their airborne adventures. The flying fish takeoff is a sight to behold. First, they gather some serious speed underwater, reaching a zippy 37 miles per hour. That's faster than some highway speed limits. Then, like a rocket ready for blastoff, they angle themselves upward and break the ocean surface, ready to take flight. But they don't stop there. These thrill seekers can reach heights of over 4 feet in the air. Can you imagine the view from up there? They glide through the sky, covering long distances. That's like the fishy equivalent of a marathon. And here's the best part. When they approach the water again, they can flap their tails and continue their flight without fully returning to the depths. These fishy flyers are also all about the nightlife. Just like partygoers flock to a glittering disco ball, flying fish are attracted to light. Crafty fishermen take advantage of this by setting up canoes with just the right amount of water to keep the fish comfy but prevent them from escaping. Then they add a luring light to the scene, and before you know it, flying fish are caught left and right, supplying a bountiful catch for those lucky fishermen. Don't worry though, these flying fish aren't on the endangered species list. Not yet, at least. The next time you find yourself by the ocean, keep an eye out for these marvelous creatures. You'll never know when you'll see a flying fish extravaganza. Our next adventure takes us into the quirky world of underwater romance. Picture this. A scene that looks like someone doing the tango with their lunch. Wait, what? No, it's not a throwing up contest, I promise. We're diving headfirst into the jaw-dropping, pun intended, mating ritual of the jawfish. These curious creatures call the coral reefs of the Caribbean Sea and the Western Atlantic home. And boy, do they know how to make a spectacle of themselves. Forget about pickup lines or fancy gestures. These jawfish rely on their unique jaw-based moves to pursue their potential partners. It's like a dance-off, but with their mouths. Not only are these fishy fellas skilled in the art of sand scooping, but they also double as diligent parents. Talk about alliteration. Talk about multitasking. The males take their parental duties to the next level by carrying the precious eggs in their giant mouths until they're ready to hatch. It's like they have their own aquatic daycare center going on. When they're not busy nurturing their offspring, these jawfish transform their mouths into fighting tools. That's right, it's time for the Jawfish Fighting Championship. They go head-to-head, or rather mouth-to-mouth, in epic battles of mouth strength and agility. You know the old saying, put your money where your mouth is? Well, these jawfish take it to a whole new level. Whether it's for romance, parroting, or friendly competition, these jawfish show us that sometimes actions do really speak louder than words. They may look like they're having a bad seafood experience, but rest assured, it's just their unique way of finding love and expressing themselves.
There are plenty of fish in the sea. Some of them look totally like Nemo or Dory. Then there's the butterfly fish and fancy guppy, which is indeed really fancy. And then there's... What on earth is that? I would definitely not pay for a diving experience to see this guy. The anglerfish has the unofficial title of the ugliest animal in the world, but I wouldn't dare to break that news to it. There are more than 200 species of anglerfish currently swimming somewhere in the gloomy depths of the Atlantic and Antarctic Oceans, up to a mile below the surface. Some of them prefer different living conditions, the shallow tropical environments. Different kinds of anglerfish vary in shape and size, from the famous black sea devil to frogfish, monkfish, footballfish, goosefish, batfish, and sea toad. The larger ones can be half as long as a full-sized bed, but most are less than a foot long. Since the choice of meals where these guys live isn't that huge, they had to come up with a unique hunting strategy. They don't waste their priceless life energy on following prospective prey. Instead, they use a piece of dorsal spine that sticks above their mouths like a fishing pole, hence the name of the fish. There's a sac of bioluminescent bacteria that glows brightly in the dark at the end of that rod. The light lures prey, and all the anglerfish has to do is wait, and then enjoy its lunch delivered right to its mouth. Their bodies are pliable and huge, so they can easily swallow prey twice their size. Deep-sea anglerfish eat whatever they can find. Species that live in more shallow water aren't picky either, and can eat anything from shrimp to snails and small fish. Only female anglerfish have the cool fishing rod feature though. So what about their males? Finding a soulmate deep under the sea isn't that easy. Literally, there's no light down there. Plus, there are frigid temperatures and low oxygen levels. Anglerfish can't afford to go on many dates in those conditions, so they mate for life. And before you go aw about it, I have to tell you, they do it in quite a special way. Male anglerfish are much smaller than their ladies. The contrast is so striking that when researchers first got interested in their love life, they thought those males were actually the offspring, or larvae, hanging out next to their moms. Certain anglerfish male species have receptors that alert them that there's a female nearby. After they mate, the male bites into his woman and stays attached to her head, belly, near her tail, and other areas he can access. While they morph together forever, the female fish gets the male's cells, DNA, and reproductive organs, but loses her immune response cells. The male gets free permanent housing and nutrition. Given the current real estate prices, it sounds like a dream. But that accommodation is shared by up to 8 males, and they can't move out if they ever feel like it. You're unlikely to meet this deep-sea fish in real life, but if you meet an anglerfish in your favorite video game, remember that you can easily outswim it and make it kinder to you with tranquilizing arrows. Once you befriend it, the anglerfish can be your scout and help you discover new areas with its bioluminescent pods. Back in the real world, down in the twilight zone of the ocean, about 650 to 3,300 feet down, the anglerfish isn't the only creature you're lucky you'll probably never meet. Many of the locals look like they come straight out of science fiction or horror movies, but that's because they had to adapt to this dark, deep world. I did my best to get you prepared for the creatures you're going to meet, starting with the common fangtooth. They spend most of their lives deep down, but at night, they move toward the surface to snack. These guys are more active than most other deep-sea dwellers. They don't wait for food to come their way, but actually follow it, and then get it with their long, hungry teeth. They don't have a built-in light bulb like the anglerfish, so they've developed a great sense of smell and use as much sunlight as they can get there in the depth to get around. Sometimes, even the shadow of a passing by prospective prey is enough for them to switch to action mode. And though they don't look too charming, they're completely harmless to humans if you ever run into one of these guys. Stoplight Loosejaw sounds like a great name for an alternative band, but it's actually another deep-sea resident with sneaky hunting habits. It has special light-producing photophores under each eye. They emit green and red light like a stoplight, hence the name of the fish. Unlike other fish, these guys hardly ever leave the twilight and midnight zones. Their lower jaw is a quarter of the total body length, and the stoplight keeps it open all the time, hoping to get some lunch. It looks like a ferocious predator, but mostly prefers zooplankton, with an occasional dessert of shrimp, krill, and fish. I'm sure you didn't expect to meet a hybrid of an eel and a bird, but here it is! The slender snipe eel has a beak, much like that of a bird, with curving tips. The beak is equipped with tiny hooked teeth that the eels use to catch the antennae of delicious shrimp. And it sure is slender, stretching up to 5 feet and weighing only a few ounces. Scientists don't know all of this guy's secrets, since it's pretty tricky to study in their natural habitat. But it looks like they only produce offspring once in a lifetime, and then pass away. Glass squids like to take it easy in life and literally go with the flow. They're filled with a solution which is lighter than water, so they don't have to make any effort to move around the deep sea looking for food and partners. These creatures are transparent, so they blend into any landscape and don't even cast a shadow while moving. Talk about a great survival tactic. If danger finds it anyway, it can transform into a lumpy ball, pushing its head and tentacles into its mantle cavity. It can also release ink into the mantle and go from transparent to black. The same ink can protect it against hungry whales and seabirds. Another tactic they use to scare off predators is to activate their light-emitting organs around their eyes. I'm getting hungry. Maybe I can snack on this sea cucumber. Ouch, it's moving! So I guess it doesn't belong in a salad after all. These soft-bodied fellows live in all parts of the ocean, from shallow waters to the deep underwater world. Most of them slowly move around with their tiny feet, but some crawl around by flexing their bodies. Sea cucumbers can shed their internal organs when there's a predator approaching. Those sticky organs distract the intruder, and the happy cucumber moves on and just grows the organs back. What's that glistening in the distance? Looks like someone dropped gems in the water. That's a sea sapphire, also known as the most beautiful animal you've never seen. Some males of this type of copepod can change color from deep blue to purple, red, or gold. 1 second later, it's gone. And it's back, shimmering bright. The secret to this magic is that their bodies are transparent and reflect light differently at certain angles. It looks like it's their way of communicating between each other and attracting mates. Female sea sapphires don't have the same superpower, but their eyes are bigger compared to males, probably to spot them from a distance. Males roam wild and free, and their ladies stay in the crystal palaces of strange barrel-shaped jellies called salps. Most of the ocean is still shrouded in mystery, whether we're talking about dark corners or creatures that are hiding in the depths. But sometimes it gives us a peek into scary things it hides in its cold, dark depths. Like when you hear on the news that there are some deep-sea creatures washed ashore after a powerful storm once again. Some just look weird, while others are real monsters that live at depths of more than 3,300 feet. The coldest and deepest parts of the ocean have created one specific phenomenon called gigantism. So, sea spiders, squids, worms, and many other animals, mostly invertebrates, or creatures without backbones, they're all way bigger and scarier than the versions we see in the more shallow areas. In the Pacific depths, you can see a sea sponge as large as a minivan. Or what about the colossal squid that lives in sub-Antarctic waters and is nearly 14 times longer than the arrow squid, a type that mostly lives in New Zealand? Researchers found many of these underwater monsters in the abyssal zone of the ocean. Back in 2021, the researchers showed images of the giant phantom jelly. It was at a depth of 3,200 feet. Its tentacles were 33 feet long. Wow, I wouldn't like to face that one on the beach. It probably eats only small fish and plankton, but it can swim to depths of more than 21,900 feet. And down there, this giant jelly doesn't have enough food. How does it survive then? Scientists haven't figured it out yet. And there are even more questions related to the giant squid, the biggest one ever found. This monster is 43 feet long, with a weight of nearly a ton. Imagine if those tentacles would grab your car, or something like that. They would smash it like it was a toy. There's no light in the abyssal zone. Sun rays just can't penetrate that deep. So there's no algae or underwater plants there. Local animals mostly eat snow. Marine snow is not like the regular one you build a snowman with. It consists of any small flakes or remains that fall from the surface of the ocean. Maybe even some leftovers that animals up there couldn't eat. So it's not much. But apparently, it's enough for very large creatures that hide deep down there, like giant squids. Squids that generally live at such depths don't bother going after their prey. They just wait until the poor animal swims right up to their long tentacles and falls into a trap. It may not be the best method ever, because not many animals will even swim into these dark, cold parts. But it's the method that saves energy. A giant squid eats only 1 ounce of fish daily, which is approximately 45 calories. That's nearly 50 times fewer calories than an average person should eat per day. So when a squid gets 1 fish, it saves it for a couple of days. I hope giant squids won't get the idea to go to the surface and look for food when there's not enough of it in the abyssal zone. And I hope even more that giant Greenland sharks won't get that same idea. You can find them at depths of up to 7,200 feet. They're twice as slow as we usually walk. They swim at a speed of 1.12 feet per second. Their slowness is part of the energy-saving mechanism that creatures down there need to survive. But they can speed up in the form of short bursts when they need to catch prey. But they kinda change their diet from predator to scavenger, considering their environment. There will be more leftovers falling from the surface than animals to go after. Greenland sharks grow just 0.4 inches per year, and they're mostly 20 feet long, which means they live for a very long time, sometimes up to 400 years. They also have a slow metabolism, and that's one of the main factors for their long life, too. Greenland sharks like to spend their time in cold waters. They're adapted to that, since their tissues have specific chemical compounds that prevent the forming of ice crystals all over their body. That means they have some sort of natural antifreeze. So what makes them so big? Scientists are still not sure, but some theories try to explain it. There's this thing called Kleiber's rule that says bigger animals tend to be more efficient. Just take a small fish and compare it to a whale with a mass hundreds of times bigger. The whale has a greater metabolism. It conserves energy more efficiently and loses less of it to the surroundings through heat. Moving on, bigger animals can ingest bigger prey. They're more likely to go through tough issues in their environment or defend themselves from predators going after them. Also, the body gets bigger when temperatures are lower. The Greenland shark is a perfect example. So are giant sea spiders. Sea spiders are generally common, and you find some very small ones at 0.04 inches. But in deeper parts of the Antarctic, they become 3-foot-long giants. They grow so big because the cold water has more oxygen. That way, more of it diffuses into the animal's body, and that allows it to grow bigger. Yeah, both as a creature and a nightmare. And how about this giant tube worm? Researchers found it accidentally while they were exploring the mysteries of the Pacific Ocean floor. They stumbled upon unusual hydrothermal vents. Volcanic heat is a thing that gets them going. As water seeps down through faults or cracks in the rock, these vents change their direction. When the water gets out of the vent, it's rich in different minerals and chemicals. Most animals wouldn't survive being around this toxic soup of chemicals, but not these tube worms. They came as a true surprise, because not only are they not bothered by these toxic vents and the almost boiling temperature of the water, but they developed entire ecosystems there. They're unique because they don't need sunlight to survive. Instead, small bacteria are their main source of energy. That bacteria gets their energy directly from these toxic chemicals. So it's not photosynthesis, but a process called chemosynthesis. And these tube worms don't have mouths. These bacteria live inside them. Strange story, huh? Plus, these scary worms reach up to 8 feet. Giant isopods are no better either. They lurk at the depths of the ocean of 1,640 feet or more below, far away from the sunlight, looking like some monstrous wood lice. They spend most of their time on the seabed, hoping to find some food falling from higher levels of the ocean. Check out their small hooked claws at the ends of their legs. Isopods use them to remain more stable while moving around the ocean floor. Since there's no light, they have long antennae that help them feel their way around. These sensory antennas are about half the length of their body. Giant isopods have pretty big eyes compared to their body size, too. They can grow over 12 inches from head to tail. And these fellas are really patient. Remember how we said animals down there rarely get food? Sometimes they need to wait for years to get a proper meal. That's why their metabolism is amazingly slow.
5 years later.
They can go for 5 years without eating anything. Imagine that. I get hungry just talking about this. In 2006, a biologist did research to compare the differences between the shallows and the deep sea regions. He realized the deep sea mirrors the island rule. First, isolated parts of land develop biodiversity you won't find anywhere else. Second, small-bodied life there grows much bigger when it's isolated, compared to life on large land masses. Resources are limited, but also competition and predators. And we don't know much about these deep-sea creatures. It's too expensive and too complicated to carry out such research. So we'll just wait for more raging storms to show us at least part of the monstrous world cold ocean depths hide.
Well, hey there. We dive back in time and into the oceans over 500 million years ago. Just, because we can. Whoa, watch out. It's not megalodon or giant sea reptiles you need to look out for here. It's a bizarre, unearthly-looking creature called Anomalocaris. The name means unlike any other shrimp. And I think you'll agree, it looks like a nightmarish cross between a shrimp and a modern-day centipede. 2 tentacles protruding from its face, each lined with razor-sharp teeth. Oh yeah, and this thing was about the size of your leg. With a wave-like movement of the flaps on each side of its body, it was graceful for a terrifying creature. It was also more advanced than any other life on this planet at the time. Especially those huge eyes. You have only one lens in each of yours. This giant shrimp had 16,000. That's 4 times more than a common housefly. And you know how good their vision is, good enough to dodge that swatter every time. All this allowed Annie to become one of the first animals on this planet to feed on others. Yep, here it is, Earth's first hunter. Its favorite meal? Trilobites. Hey, try a bite. Those are the ancient ancestors of crabs. Some of their fossils have marks on them in the same shape as the monster shrimp's mouthparts. Terrors of the past like this got to be so giant thanks to more oxygen in the atmosphere. A perfect example of this, Meganeuropsis. Imagine a dragonfly. Now make it as big as a cat, and with a wingspan longer than your arm. Megan, the monster-sized dragonfly, could easily grab other insects or even small animals, and she ruled the air with quick movements. Back then, there were still no large birds or other airborne enemies for this behemoth bug, so it was safe and free to grow as large as this planet would allow. Piranhas of the past were also jumbo-sized. Mega piranha was about 3 times the size of the river terrors we have today. Its bite force was about the same as a tiger's, and those striped kitties bite down 2 times harder than lions. That means it probably not only dined on other fish and any land creatures that, got too close to the water, but it could also easily crunch down on large turtles and other unlucky shelled creatures. And fun fact, modern-day piranhas bark like dogs when they're about to enter a confrontation. It actually sounds more like a frog's ribbit. But makes you wonder, what did this mega-sized ancient cousin sound like? A bear roaring? How about giant sea scorpions the size of your bed? Go back about 460 million years, and you'd see them swimming under you. And watch out for that tail. Scientists still don't know if these creatures could use it to inject venom like your standard land scorpion, but something tells me I wouldn't want that thing anywhere near me. Then there's this guy, Therizinosaurus. Terry looks sort of like a goose with long arms. Oh, and did I mention this goose dino is about 2 stories tall and longer than a bus? Yow! Its arms make the T-Rexes look even more bite-sized, each 8 feet long, almost triple the length of T-Rexes. And on the end, razor-sharp claws the size of your whole arm. Now, don't worry about those lengthy claws too much, though. Terry probably used them to cut through giant termite nests. So, this huge reptilian goose was more interested in eating bugs and plants. Another mega monster for you, Megatherium. The giant ground sloth could look a giraffe straight in the eye and weighed as much as a hippo. It moved mainly on its hind legs and used its massive tail as support. He had huge paws with colossal knife-sized claws. The sloth could use them to defend itself from enemies and to bend tree branches in search of food. But the biggest danger to the giant ground sloth wasn't dinosaurs or saber-toothed tigers, it was our own species. Yep, humans showed up just in time to meet this fellow, and to, eat him up. Titanoboa was a terrifying 50-foot snake, as long as the great megalodon itself. It was also more than 2 times heavier than the heavyweight champion among snakes today, the green anaconda. Crocodiles were a regular on this serpent's menu. Titanoboa could swim 3 times faster than the fastest Olympic swimmer our species has ever seen. It was quicker and more dangerous in the water than outside it. And don't forget the boa part of its name. This massive snake wasn't venomous. Instead, it liked to squeeze. Remember that giant shrimp from earlier? Well, Opabenia looks like its teeny-tiny finger-sized cousin. And instead of 2 toothy tentacles, this thing had a vacuum hose coming out of its face. On the end of that trunk, what looks like a single crab claw. Add 5 eyes and a mouth under its head, and you've got a recipe for something not of this planet. Only it is. This creature used its trunk like an elephant does. Its claw grabbed food from the bottom of the ocean and brought it up to its mouth. This thing is so weird-looking that, apparently, when the scientists who discovered it presented his findings to an audience, they all laughed as if he were joking. Now, a real-life monster, the Tully monster. From a distance, it looks a bit like Nessie, that long neck and teeth-lined jaws. But get closer, and you'll see it's more like a long nose with a mouth attached at the end, like a mosquito. Its eyes are further back, sticking out of tubes all snail-like. Tully was an ancient mollusk, about the size of your forearm. It probably dined on jellyfish and shrimp 300 million years ago. Thylacus smilus will put a smile on your face as long as you don't get too close. No, it's not a relative of the saber-toothed tiger. It was a marsupial, making it more related to a kangaroo than anything. And if you compare them to body size, its fangs were actually longer than a saber-toothed tiger's. And they grew continuously. As for that beard on its chin, that's actually all chin. The lower jawbone grew down to a point under the mouth. Those fangs were rooted to the skull, going way back to its eyes. When the mouth was closed, that bony beard protected the long, sharp teeth from breakage. Staganapolis, not to be confused with Minneapolis, might look like a big crocodile with a squished-in snout, but it was mostly harmless. Its small head and very few teeth meant the reptile didn't have much to work with when protecting itself. That's what all those armored scales were for, and no need for huge fangs or long rows of razor-sharp teeth when you're a plant eater. That beak-like tip on its nose allowed the stag to dig up plants. So, really, this reptile was more like a 10-foot scaly pig than a croc. Basilosaurus was a type of ancient whale that lived on our planet about 45 million years ago. Not quite as long as a blue whale, but this guy was still big enough to munch down on other whales and even sharks. Some people believe these monsters could still exist today. Eyewitnesses claim to have seen a giant sea dragon, and Basilosaurus fits the description. Plus, 90% of our oceans are unexplored. There's plenty of space to hide a sea monster. But scientists haven't found any fossils of this ancient whale younger than 3.7 million years. So, this myth is busted. Stegosaurus is one of the most recognizable dinosaurs that ever lived. It can easily be distinguished by those huge spikes on its tail and the bony plates on its back. It was twice as long as a giraffe and nearly 5 times heavier. But compared to its body size, it had the world's smallest brain. It was no larger than a dog's. Pelagornis had the largest wingspan of any bird ever discovered. It was twice the size of the largest bird today, the wandering albatross. Such huge wings made it hard for the bird to take off. It could only do so by jumping off cliffs. And when it finally spread its wings, this giant could only go about 40 miles per hour. The fastest bird today can reach speeds 5 times that. Now, if you step on a sea urchin, you're gonna know right away. Look at those spikes. Get the point? Ow! While they're not aggressive, they've got a great defense going against any creatures that want to eat them. Venomous spikes and a poisonous bite. Pick your poison, literally. They live in all of the oceans of the world, so avoiding them is out of the question. They mostly hang out in shallow water, hiding in rock pools and reefs, so unmindful people step on them a lot. The long venomous spikes of the urchin look like needles. Feel like them too. They can go in quite deep, plus they release a strong toxin. The cure? Remove the spikes quickly and wash with salt water. One small marine mammal just loves sea urchins. Any guesses? It's the sea otter. Don't let its cuteness get in the way of its toughness. These mammals rarely leave the water, and that even includes taking naps. Holding hands with other otters keeps them from floating away from the pack. Their fur is the densest on the planet, up to 1 million hairs per square inch. Hey, we humans only have about 2,000. They're also good with tools. They can use rocks to hammer open shells. Hey, how else would you open a sea urchin? You ought to try it sometime. Stonefish aren't going to win any beauty contest unless the pageant is for Best Rock Look-alike. Their tiny unreflective eyes and rough skin blend in perfectly with their environment. A large head, an even bigger mouth, and a home full of, it's rocks. And just 'cause you're on the beach doesn't mean you're safe. Stonefish can survive for 24 hours out of the water. Stepping on one or even handling one won't be that fun. Their dorsal fin spines have extremely strong venom. It shoots out when they get stepped on, and it can lead to paralysis or even heart failure. You'll need help fast. No wonder they're one of the most dangerous creatures in the water or anywhere. Be careful when scrambling around rocky areas. They love to play hide and seek. Box jellyfish tentacles grow up to 10 feet long, and each tentacle has 5,000 stinging cells. Not bad for a creature that's mostly just water. Their venom is strong enough to paralyze anything they want to eat. Now, if you happen to get stung, it's going to hurt. A lot! Its toxins contain proteins that affect the heart, skin cells, and even our nervous system. No wonder it's considered one of the most dangerous creatures on the planet. I wouldn't recommend using sunscreen, soda, coffee, or other older methods. They don't work. Your best bet is some good old-fashioned seawater. Looks like jellyfish are the rulers of the ocean, not sharks. Hey, look around your local rock pool. You might see this sweet little octopus. It's tiny and has blue rings. Cute. But don't fall for it now. This octopus wouldn't make a good pet. When provoked, the octopus will start flashing neon blue to warn everyone to stay away. And I highly recommend you do just that. Their venom is 1,000 times more dangerous than cyanide. There's also no known antidote for it. The best thing to do? Take a quick picture and walk away. Better yet, just walk away. Now, not even the octopuses are normal down under. I'll stick with my shrimp on the barbie, mate. Do you see that large log near the ocean floor? Maybe it's part of an old ship, a treasure, gold, diamonds. Hey, I'm rich! As you get closer, you notice something. It's swimming. It's not a shark or a dolphin. It's a saltwater crocodile. Now, don't panic. If you bump into one of these reptiles in the sea, it's unlikely it'll think of you as food. Crocodiles have a special valve in their throat that stops them from drowning underwater, but that doesn't mean they can't bite. Usually they're heading to a nearby island, and the quickest way there is to body surf. They can't really take the ferry. Watching one from a distance should be okay, just don't swim to shore right away. They love to ambush their lunch in the shallow water. If there's one time I'd like to see a great white shark, it's when I'm diving with crocodiles. They'll gladly take a crocodile-sized nibble, given the right motivation. Going out on a boat off the coast of Mexico sounds like the perfect vacation. The sun, the blue water, the most endangered sea creature. Wait, what? The vaquita isn't dangerous, but don't expect it to stick around to say hello or sign any autographs. It's incredibly shy. This little cow, that's what the Spanish means, is one tiny sea mammal. With those black markings around its eyes, it looks more like a sea panda to me. Seeing one should make you feel very special. They're on the brink of extinction, mostly because they get caught up by accident in fishing nets. It's estimated that there are only 10 left in the wild. The Galapagos Islands are legendary. Giant tortoises, blue-footed bobbies, Sally Lightfoot crabs, and red-lipped batfish. But if you've ever swum around there, you might have seen something really unexpected in the water. Iguanas everywhere! These large marine reptiles eat the algae that grow on underwater rocks. They're strictly vegetarians. Yeah, I'll bet the fish are happy about that. A long, flat tail designed for swimming helps them move around, and sharp claws keep them on the rocks for their daily sunbathing sessions. But watch them closely. They sneeze a lot. They haven't got a cold or anything. They're sneezing out salt. A special gland keeps the salt out of their nose, and they've got to get rid of it somehow. Ooh, sounds painful. What's cool is that they don't mind us in the water with them. Because the islands have been so isolated, the creatures here aren't afraid of humans. Now, if picking up shells on the beach is something you like doing, make sure the shell you collect doesn't already have an owner. Snails are everywhere in this world, and they're mostly harmless to the touch. But there's always one, ruining it for everybody. Trust me, the cone snail is nothing like its land-based brothers. It's not vegetarian. There are over 500 species of this venomous sea creature, with a few that can really hurt you. These little snails are extremely vicious. They inject their venom through a harpoon-like tooth, and they don't even floss. They're capable of paralysis, blindness, lung failure, and even worse. Best give some respect to your backyard snails. You don't want them calling this thing in as a backup. Want to high-five a sea creature? Well, put your hand, up for the Tasmanian red handfish. This fish doesn't swim like a fish, it walks. It uses its flipper-like hands to stroll around on the ocean floor. These bottom walkers are disturbed by swimmers and boats a lot. Some people even want to take them home as pets. I think it's better to just give them a wave and swim on by. If you think starfish love getting their photo taken, does that mean you can communicate with starfish? If you could, this one would ask you to leave it alone. It's always grumpy. Unlike its washed-up relatives on the seashore, the crown-of-thorns starfish is large and dangerous. These creatures occur naturally on coral, like the Great Barrier Reef. Their venom's terrifying, even for humans. This sea creature is covered in poisonous spines that cause intense and immediate pain. It can last longer than 3 hours. So, what happens if you rub one of these things the wrong way? Nausea and vomiting. Not exactly ideal for getting that perfect Instagram pic. Pufferfish may look small and cute, but handle them wrong and it's game over. They're a huge hit at underwater birthday parties the world over. They can turn themselves into balloons. Funnily enough, not all pufferfish are venomous with sharp spikes. Some are smooth and adorable. But the nasty ones have a highly toxic substance inside their body. Which is weird because you could pay up to $50 for it at a restaurant. You ever heard of the Japanese delicacy fugu? It's venomous pufferfish on a plate. Young chefs spend years training to prepare it. But one wrong cut, and you can bet that customer won't be coming back. Ever. Sharks are the only animal immune to pufferfish toxin. Great. Another thing that makes sharks awesome.